In 2017, my son was brutally executed. The execution was planned. My son Daniel was to be executed on the Sunday, not the Monday. The reason he lived another day, the executioners wasn't happy with the machete being sharp enough. So they decided to get a 4x4 wood to sharpen the machete up to check that it could do maximum damage to my son. 1 o'clock in the afternoon, my son was invited round to the flat, not knowing an execution was going to take place. Once at the flat, the people began to make phone calls. In come the executioners with the machete. My son was sitting in a chair. They attacked him in the arm, and they attacked him in the back with the machete. No one tried to help my son. My son managed to run out of the flat. He ran a few yards down the road. They all chased him. While he laid there dying, they macheted him in the head. Just butchered him like a piece of meat. 1 o'clock in the afternoon. All the killers involved then decided to go to a hotel where they had a full English breakfast. Some even had a velvet chocolate cake. Then they went about their business, dealing their drugs. I got a phone call, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, saying that my son had been attacked. I knew that my son had been executed. We arrived at the hospital when my son was pronounced dead. Then it was just like picking the pieces up to find out what happened, why it happened. The execution with a machete was nothing more than that. It wasn't a knife crime, it wasn't a bullet to the head. It was set up, it was planned by a gang of people, and each and every one of those people was involved. The next day I stayed at the hospital. Obviously I didn't leave. No one was there to help me through it. No police come there, no nothing. I stayed at the hospital until we was asked to leave. We wasn't going to leave. Then we was forced to leave. Only the next day did the police manage to come round and speak to me. I wanted my son's body. Obviously I wasn't allowed it for forensic. But I then had to go and identify the body, which I would have done anyway. It's my son. Only then did I know that they had to remove the brain. They executed my son like a piece of meat in pure daylight. And there was a gang. Each and every one of that gang was involved in my son's execution. When the police decided that they'd got the right people, they made some charges. We went through some court cases. Some was convicted of murder. Some was given 3 years. the case was ongoing because the drugs people involved was quite heavy, quite big. No one was willing to talk. I wasn't willing to give up on my son. Then they all started grassing each other up. So we have a killer that admitted to the killing after a while. He admitted that he was the one with the machete that done the execution, but on orders of other members of the gang. There's a lot more to this story that I'm not going into yet, a hell of a lot more. But the bottom line is, the people that killed my son, the execution that took place, the really sad thing is, people knew that my son was going to be executed a week before. No one warned the authorities or me. Some of the people that knew of my son's execution was as close as I was. They sat in my house, making out to grieve with me. And it turned out, loads of people was involved, but it turned out the people closest to my son, knew that he was to be executed and done nothing about it. Turned up at my door, making out, wanting sympathy. When he confessed that he knew that my son was to be killed, obviously I freaked out, phoned the police. But did you know it's not a crime? So if I'm going to kill my best mate now, and I told loads of people about it, and they knew that I was going to kill, it's not a crime. It's not a crime. How do you work that out? It's not a crime. Knowing that someone's to be executed and they could put a stop to it. But yet it's not a crime. And yet some of the people most closest to my son knew this. Closest to me knew this. But it's not a crime. I say, Lord, well done. Two days later, I went to the scene of the crime. There was blood, my son's blood everywhere. It was all cordoned. And I knew I couldn't leave the blood like that. So I got a bucket, got a scrubbing brush, got water, and I went back and I cleaned my son's blood up. I ate membrane. I was strong. I knew that I could clean it up. It was my son. It was my job to do that. And I was absolutely fine until I hit the clots. The water was red like a river. I was covered in my son's blood that was just allowed to sit there for 2 days. And the police come over, don't do that, Diane, what are you doing? But no one else had bothered. As if I was going to let the blood sit there for people to trample all through. It wasn't going to happen. So I cleaned the blood up, which is the right thing to do, and any parent would do the same. The first court cases was to be held in one place, which there was a few. Like I said before, some was convicted, some was convicted of other things as well as being there. In the meantime, I wasn't told that the court case had gone ahead, even though I phoned the police every day. They kept saying it hadn't started. 2 weeks into my son's trial, the court case had already been going on. When I phoned the police, they said, yeah, I was sent to the wrong court, deliberately, racing back to the original. So being given the runaround over my son's trial, I was going from one court to the other, being told different times, and all the time, all the killers' families was already in court. So when I finally got to the truth of where the court case was being held, I was mocked by everybody because I wasn't there for my son, which I've always been there. It was a lie, a blatant lie by the authorities to keep me away from my son's court trial. That ain't going to happen, and it didn't happen. Like I said, I was mocked by everybody. Not good. Also, I was asked not to cry in court, listening to the killers doing what they'd done to my son, chopping him up. But I wasn't allowed to show emotion or cry because it was upsetting the other families. Again, well done, the justice system. I had no backup. I wasn't allowed anyone to be there with me. And yet I was made to feel like I was a criminal and I was doing wrong. Everything that was said in court was to do with the killers' families. The killers have families, they have children, they have a mum and a dad. Nothing was mentioned about my son's siblings, my son's children, me as his mum. It was like there was nothing for us at all, and yet it was my son that was macheted, bled out in broad daylight. And that was allowed, but that was okay. I had to listen to the judge saying how my son was set up, how he was lured to the flat, how people made out to be his friend, all along knowing that he was going to be executed. It was in court that I learned about the 4x4 with the machete, even though I knew my son was executed. No one briefed me on none of this. So in another court case, I had to sit there and listen to that, and I cried. And then again, I was pulled outside and told not to cry. Well done. But then the judge went on to say that my son was lured to the flat. It was a deliberate act. What happened to my son was planned. And yet within 10 minutes, it had all changed. That maybe they didn't mean to kill my son. Maybe, you know, the killers, the executioners, had families. They had mummies and daddies, you know. They had siblings, like I have, we have, like Danny has. But it turned out that they'd done a plea. So the police and everyone involved played Russian roulette with my son's life. So we had one that admitted to the execution, even though he was ordered to do it. He admitted killing my son. And because he admitted killing my son, the sentence went from 30 so many years to 11 years if he grassed the others up. So Russian roulette, that's where that comes in. All in my son's head. So what we wanted then was for the person that ordered, is not just my son's killings, other killings, which we did know that there was another one that ordered the killing. Obviously, yeah, of course I wanted him as well. But to give an actual killer 30-something years into 11 years, and the judge completely contradicted himself. Where is the justice in any of this? Where is it? There's no point. Running around with machetes, executing people. Today it's like going out and getting a packet of fags. It's happening all the time and we don't care. The law isn't there for us. The law is there to protect these people in case, because our world's turned into a pussy society where if we say something about someone, we're racist or we're judgmental or we're homophobic or whatever. So all these crimes are happening on the basis of getting away with everything that they do that is unjust. But yet there's no justice for the people that are outright murdered. Set up, my son's execution was set up, everyone knew it was set up. So we go on to a next case. So these trials all took place in one court. So then when they said that there was more people, that they wanted to take down the original people that ordered my son's execution, Of course I was up for that. They then decided to take that court case to another court. People know that my daughter was killed in 2006. Wasn't good. I'm not going to go into that, but I will say that that took place at Snaresbrook. So all these trials of my sons, and the last trial they wanted to go ahead at Snaresbrook, had nothing to do with coronavirus. This was before coronavirus. And I fought against it. It's not right. I've had a murder trial. I had a trial there for my daughter that was killed. Why would you put me in the same court for a second child that had been murdered at the same court? Absolutely horrific. And they make out that they're there for us. Anything we need, anything you want, we'll do and we'll help. No. You helped the killers. You was there for them. You was there to protect them. There was nothing for me or my family. Okay? So we're now in 2021, in February, when they decided the other trial had to go ahead to convict the person that ordered the execution of my son at Snaresbrook, Crown Court, even though I didn't want it to happen there. That's exactly where it went ahead. Obviously, now coronavirus kicked in. I had permission to be there. I was allowed to be in the court. Obviously, I was going to be there. It's my son. So I get to court on that day of my son's trial. I see people, I don't know who they were until after. So when I'm there, we had some mean people there that should have been looking out for me, that didn't. Tried to block me going into the court for the trial. I was absolutely beside myself. That was my son. The last trial we was going to have. I'd also had my daughter's trial there. It was stressing enough for me. They put me in another room with a video link. And I remember just crying and crying, saying, why? Why am I here? Why even lie to me? Why am I here? Again, coronavirus had nothing whatsoever to do with it. I found out that the killer's family was allowed in there with them while I was in the next room. I was hysterical. I was just crying so hard. I felt alone. No one was there for me. I wasn't allowed no one there for me. But yet they were. The driver that was taking me to and from court every day, he went to find out what was going on. And he come into me. He knelt down and he said, Diane, they're making out that you done something. No, he didn't say they're making out. He said the other police involved accused me of doing something, which obviously I never done. Ever have I done anything. It was just a thing to keep me out of the court for my son's trial. Why would you do that to me? I'm going through one of the most horrific murders that you can go through, executions. I've done nothing wrong to the police. I've done nothing wrong, full stop. I'm not criminal, even though there's criminals out there that haven't got a criminal record. Why? Don't you think I'd gone through enough? And they blatantly lied. And I wasn't going to back down. I didn't back down. I asked the clerks why, what, and they said that I should have been in there and they'd find out what was going on. The driver that was taking me to court every day, I could see he looked me straight in the eye and he knew that I was being set up. Just because they didn't want me in on my son's trial. In case I cried, in case I shouted out. I'm not violent, I've never done nothing to no one. But I wasn't allowed to show emotion. I wonder why that is. Is it because my son was white and all the killers were black? I don't know. I love everyone. Got black grandkids. No, that makes no difference whatsoever. But why was I not allowed? No one there for me. And everyone else was there. Why was I given such a hard time? Why did police try to bully me? Why did they make my life hell when I'd already gone through hell? How dare they? I didn't back down. Never would I back down. The next day, one of the top police officers turned up when I was still crying, not knowing whether I could go back in the court. Well, I wasn't even allowed in there. And then you had all the big people around him, all looking at me. intimidating me. Did it work? Of course it didn't. He looked at me, and I just looked at him, and I thought, I know that he was the boss of everything, and if he said, I can't go in, I can't go in. And he said, Diane, you didn't lie. I know you didn't do what they said you done. And I just burst out crying even more, and then I had to suck up to these people that are meant to be helping me, because I knew what their game was, to try and keep me out of that courtroom. How sick and sad is that? Give me a break. My son was executed, okay? I didn't pick on anyone. I'm not against anyone. I've got no bitterness or anger against anyone. But yet you treated me like that. And yet everyone else was allowed in there, patting each other on the back, doing what they wanted to do. Who are they? And I'm sitting there crying, and I had no one. And that is how I had to go through the whole of that trial with nobody. If it wasn't through the clerks and the ushers in that court, and even a lot of the barristers, everyone was so nice and kind to me. It had already got round that I'd already lost a daughter, and that her trial was there, and some of the people remembered me from that trial. Without them, I wouldn't have... They was my rock, and I didn't even know them, but they were so kind, and they really did look after me, and I thank them so much. Getting back to the court case, it was outlined of one of the most unusual murder trials, purely because there was so many involved, but the one person that done the main killing that admitted it in the end for a lower sentence to take the main gang down. So why the judge said it was so unusual, a really unusual case, was because we had someone that had already admitted to executing my son that I had to sit there and look at. So I had the killer on one side, I had the person on the other side of me, and then they had their families there, I had no one there, but I'm sitting between all these people. But it turned out that we wanted the person that ordered the executions, because we know they'd done many more. That's why this case was so unusual. So to get him convicted would have been a major turning point. Obviously, I'm not going to say a lot about the jury, but what I will say is if it was down to the judge, he would have convicted each and every one of them. But it was out of the judge's hands. What a big mistake. What a mistake. It wasn't just my son they've killed other people. They're still out there now with their machetes, still doing their drugs lines. So we've got to the end of the... Oh no, actually I want to say something about the trial. So then they bring a person in that had been really beat up badly by these gang. They put him behind a curtain because he was too scared to speak. But what I thought was really, really strange... Oh, and when they brought the killer in every day, you had a good 20 police armed officers protecting him, the killer. Every day solid while they brought him to and from court. Anyway, after he'd done his bit, they brought a witness in. Like I said, he was really scared. He had to go behind a curtain. I don't know who he was. But one thing I do know that I thought was really strange, one of the killers and the people that ordered my son's execution, one of the people in the gallery was blatantly allowed to go and sit behind this man that was in hiding behind a curtain. How could you make a mistake like that? How could you do that? I thought that was really strange. Then we was told to go outside while they deliberated something. I always had someone with me. I was put outside, and this bloke, this one of the, I call them the minions men, he was on me. which I thought was really strange. I'm not going to say what he was saying to me. It would all be on camera. He shouldn't have been allowed at all. Talking to me, questioning me. How wrong is the justice system? And then when I realised what he was actually telling me, what he said to me, I freaked out a little bit. But obviously I stayed calm. And then when I told the police about it, it was like, oh no. All they had to do was look on camera and see it, but no, they didn't. They wasn't bothered. Anyway, getting back to the trial, it was obviously wasn't going good. The main person that orders everyone's execution was going to get off with it. They put me in a side room and they asked me, if this goes the wrong way, how do you think you're going to react? How can I say how I'm going to react? You don't know your feelings. It's a human emotion. How would you know how you're going to react? And I just said, why? And I just looked, why are you asking me that? How can you ask me that? Straight away, that was another ploy for the police to kick off with me. Oh, we're going to take you upstairs. Oh, you won't be allowed down now. Didn't even say anything. Any form of intimidation against me, they tried. But they failed. And they'll keep failing. I've done nothing wrong to no one. And you ain't going to do nothing wrong to me. And you're not going to make me feel worthless when I'm there for my son's execution. Okay? I think I've proved myself. There alone with each and every one of you bullies. I went through enough. My son was executed. I cleaned his blood up. I cremated his brain because it come back 4 weeks after I had my son cremated. So I had no choice. Don't go bullying me to cover up what you've done, to cover up your vile, evil ways. There's no need for that. And I think it's about time we all had a fair crack in the whip. Not because you want to score brownie points or get ahead of the system, or because we're scared of saying something because of upsetting someone. What about what I went through? I didn't need sympathy. I didn't need your backup. I didn't need nothing from you. I stand alone and I always will. But your behaviour was disgusting and I told you that. And I also told you 2 wrongs don't make a right. Anyway, to cut it all short, he got off. He had to do time. He's doing time for other stuff that he committed, which is to do with everything that they've been doing. There's gangs out there all over and we know that. But they're running around, not whether it's a knife, machete, gun, whatever, but it's machetes they're using. And when our people are killed, it isn't, knife crime, whatever. They're executed. It's planned. It's an execution. My son was executed in front of members of the public, in front of everyone. My son managed to get out of the flat and then they carried on in broad daylight. Then they went to a hotel to have their breakfast. Then, an hour or 2 after that, they went on to sell more drugs. Okay? So, this is a justice system. But I tell you now, my son, I love you. And no matter what happened to you, you're in a safer place now. But you know, Mummy, I never left you and I've fought every inch of the way for you, darling. And I will. I've always stood alone. I've never had crowds. I've never had makeup. I've never needed it. But to go through what I went through and then to have people turn on me, they should have been helping me. I love you, my boy, and I love you, Kezia. Oh, my last words, I just want to say, I was given a card by the court, the ushers and all the people in the court that really looked out for me. Thank you so much. Also, they allowed me to go to the chapel. I didn't know there was a chapel there at Snaresbrook. They allowed me to go there and put flowers down for my son and my daughter and have as much time there as I wanted. And without you people, you know you are, just for your kindness. and for looking out for me. Thank you so much. And Danny and Kezia, Mummy will always, always love you. Bye, darlings.